Chapter 7. The Warehouse Raid. The summons came 3 days after Kit's encounter with Thomas in the alley. Webb found her at noon in a chop house near Shadwell, sliding into the seat across from her without invitation. His expression was tense, which was unusual. Webb prided himself on appearing unflappable. "Big job tonight," he said quietly. "Strand wants you on it." Kit set down her bread. "What kind of big job?" "The shipment I mentioned when you first signed on. It's coming in tonight instead of next week." Strand moved up the schedule. Webb glanced around the chop house, making sure no one was listening. "We need every reliable hand we've got." Kit's pulse quickened. The shipment Thomas had mentioned. He'd been right about it, which meant his information was solid, which meant what exactly? "What's my role?" she asked. "Same as usual. Unlock doors, stand watch, help move cargo if needed. But this is different from the small jobs you've been doing." Webb's voice dropped even lower. "This is worth more than everything you've moved combined. If it goes wrong, people die. Understand?" "I understand." "Strand's paying triple rate for tonight. £3 if everything goes smooth." Webb pulled out a scrap of paper with an address. "West India Docks, Warehouse 7, midnight. Don't be late, don't be stupid, and don't try to be a hero if something goes wrong." "What could go wrong?" "Everything." Webb stood, dropping coins on the table for her meal. "That's why we're being careful, and why Strand wants his best people on this." He left before Kit could ask more questions. She sat in the chop house for another few minutes, thinking. Thomas had known about this shipment when it was supposedly still a week away, had known it was important, nerve-making. The fact that Strand had moved up the timeline suggested he was worried about rivals, about the law, about something, which meant tonight, son, would be dangerous. Kit paid for her meal and walked back to her boarding house slowly, mind working through possibilities. She should probably let Thomas know about the job, use it to test his reliability. If he was what he claimed, someone working against Strand, this would be valuable information. But if he was law, telling him would be handing him everything he needed to destroy Strand's operation. And Kit wanted to be the one to destroy Strand. Not the police, not some rival gang. Her. Still, having Thomas owe her information seemed useful. And if there was going to be trouble tonight, maybe having him aware of it could work in her favor. Kit pulled out the card he'd given her, looked at the Clerkenwell address. She had 8 hours until the job. Plenty of time to make contact and get back. Decision made, she started walking north. The address led to a lodging house in a respectable neighborhood, the kind of place where clerks and shopkeepers lived, where people kept their windows clean and didn't ask questions about their neighbors. Kit felt conspicuous walking up to the door in her East End clothes, aware of the eyes watching from behind curtains. She knocked, waited. A landlady answered, middle-aged, severe, suspicious. "I'm looking for Thomas," Kit said. "He's expecting me." The landlady's expression suggested she doubted that, but stepped aside anyway. "Second floor, room 4. Wipe your feet." Kit climbed the narrow stairs, found the door marked with a tarnished brass 4, and knocked. Thomas opened it almost immediately, like he'd been waiting. His expression shifted from surprise to something more guarded when he saw her. "Kit, I didn't expect—" He glanced down the hallway. "Come in, quickly." Kit stepped inside, and Thomas closed the door behind her. The room was small, but clean. A bed, a desk covered with papers, a washstand, books stacked on a shelf. More books than she'd expected. Not what she'd pictured for a criminal's lodgings. "I didn't think you'd take me up on my offer so soon," Thomas said, moving to clear papers off the desk's chair. "Sit. I'm not here to take you up on anything." Kit stayed standing. "I'm here because you were right about the shipment." His expression sharpened. "It's happening?" "Tonight. Midnight. West India Docks." Kit watched his face carefully. Strand moved up the schedule. He's nervous about something. He should be. Thomas crossed to the window, looking out at the street. That cargo's worth a fortune. Every gang in London knows about it by now. He's going to have trouble. How do you know that? Because I know how these things work. Big shipments attract attention. The kind of attention that gets people killed. He turned back to face her. "You shouldn't go." "I don't have a choice. I'm part of the crew now." "You always have a choice." "Not if I want to stay inside Strand's operation." Kit crossed her arms. "This is what I signed up for." Thomas studied her for a long moment. "You're not just doing this for money, are you?" "We've had this conversation." "No," we danced around it. "But I'm asking directly now." He moved closer. "Why do you want inside Strand's organization? What are you really after?" Kit's jaw tightened. "That's none of your business." "It is, if we're going to work together." "We're not working together. I gave you information, that's all." Kit turned toward the door. "Consider it a test. If you're what you claim, you'll use it wisely. If you're law, I'll know soon enough." "Kit, wait." Thomas stepped between her and the door. "If you go to that warehouse tonight, you could get caught in a raid." "What makes you think there'll be a raid?" "Because He stopped, seeming to reconsider his words. "Because shipments this size attract official attention. The customs officers might be bribed, but not all the police are." "Then I'll be careful." "Careful might not be enough." Thomas's expression was intense now, almost concerned. "If something goes wrong, if you're caught with that cargo, you'll hang. Is your vendetta against Strand worth that?" Kit froze. "Who said anything about a vendetta?" "No one had to. It's written all over you." Thomas didn't move from the door. "You work for him, but you hate him. You're gathering information beyond what the jobs require. You're planning something, and it's personal. I'm not stupid, Kit." She should leave, should push past him and walk away and never come back. But something in his voice, the genuine concern, the directness, made her hesitate. "My reasons are my own," she said finally. "Fair enough. But if you're going to that warehouse tonight, at least let me help." "Why would you do that?" "Because I don't want to see you dead in the Thames, because Strand's operation fell apart at the worst possible moment." Thomas pulled a small notebook from his pocket, scribbled something, and handed it to her. "If things go bad, if you need to get out quickly, this is where you run. There's a safe house 2 streets from the docks. I'll make sure someone's there tonight." Kit looked at the address. "Why are you helping me?" "Because we want the same thing, Strand destroyed, and I think you're more valuable alive than dead." His smile was slight, almost sad. "Even if you don't trust me yet." Kit pocketed the paper. "I should go. I need to prepare." This time Thomas stepped aside, but as she reached for the door, he spoke again. "Kit, be careful tonight, please." She left without answering. Midnight found Kit at the West India Docks, standing in the shadows near Warehouse 7. The fog was thick off the Thames, turning the dock into a maze of shapes and sounds. She could hear water lapping against pilings, the creak of ships at anchor, distant voices from taverns along the waterfront. Webb appeared beside her, silent as a ghost. "You ready?" Always. Good. Strand's already inside with the main crew. Your job is the loading dock. Keep that door unlocked and watch for anyone coming from the east side. If you see trouble, 1 whistle. 2 whistles means run. Kit nodded, moving toward her position. She could see other members of Strand's crew scattered around the warehouse. At least a dozen men, maybe more. This was bigger than anything she'd been part of before. The ship had docked an hour ago, and now men were moving cargo from its hold to the warehouse. Crates and crates of it, handled carefully, wrapped in canvas. Opium, just like Thomas had said. Enough to supply every den in London for months. Kit picked the loading dock lock and took up her position, back against the wall, eyes scanning the street. Minutes passed. The work continued, efficient and quiet. Then she heard it. The sound of boots on cobblestones. Multiple people moving with purpose. Kit's hand went to her pocket, ready to whistle a warning. But something made her hesitate. The footsteps were too organized, too disciplined. Not a rival gang. Police. She saw them emerge from the fog. A dozen constables, truncheons drawn, led by a man in a better coat who had to be an inspector. They moved toward the warehouse in a coordinated sweep. This was a raid, a planned, organized raid. Kit whistled once, the warning signal. Inside the warehouse, she heard shouts, the sound of crates being dropped, men running. She should run too, should disappear into the fog before the police saw her. But Strand was inside. This was her chance. If he was caught, arrested, his operation would collapse. Her vengeance would be complete without her having to lift a finger. Except it wouldn't be her vengeance. It would be the law's justice, which wasn't the same thing at all. Kit hesitated too long. One of the constables spotted her, shouted. 2 of them started running toward her position. She bolted, heading for the alley Webb had shown her as an escape route. Behind her, the warehouse had erupted in chaos. Police shouting, Strand's men scattering, the sound of breaking crates and blowing whistles. Kit ran flat out, her knowledge of the docks the only advantage she had. The constables were bigger, stronger, but she was faster and knew the terrain. She ducked under a cargo net, vaulted over a pile of rope, turned sharp into an alley, and ran straight into another constable who'd flanked around to cut her off. He grabbed her arm and Kit reacted on instinct, drove her knee into his stomach, twisted free when his grip loosened, reached for her knife. Someone else hit the constable from the side, a blur of motion that sent the man sprawling. Kit stumbled back, knife raised, and found herself facing Thomas. He was dressed differently than before, rougher clothes, a cap pulled low. But it was definitely him. And he was fighting like someone who knew what he was doing, efficient and brutal, putting the constable down with 2 quick strikes. "Run!" Thomas grabbed her wrist, pulling her deeper into the alley. They ran together, Thomas leading now. Taking turns Kit didn't know existed. She could hear pursuit behind them, but growing fainter. They emerged onto Narrow Street, and Thomas pulled her into a recessed doorway, pressing them both into the shadows. Kit's heart was pounding, her breath coming hard. Thomas held up a hand, listening. The sounds of pursuit passed by, moving in the wrong direction. They waited in silence for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Finally, Thomas released her wrist and stepped back slightly. "You're bleeding," he said quietly, gesturing to her arm. Kit looked down, a long scratch across her forearm, probably from the cargo net. She hadn't even felt it. "It's nothing. Still needs cleaning." Thomas glanced out at the street. "Come on. The safe house is close." "I'm fine." "Kit, half of London's police force just raided Strand's operation. You can't go home right now." They'll be watching all the known associates. He met her eyes. Trust me, just for tonight. She didn't trust him, didn't trust anyone, but he'd just saved her from arrest, had fought a constable to do it, and she was bleeding and exhausted, and the adrenaline was starting to wear off. Fine, she said. Lead the way. The safe house was a narrow building on Jamaica Road, unremarkable and dark. Thomas had a key. He led her upstairs to a sparsely furnished room with a bed, a table, and a wash basin. Wait here, he said, disappearing into another room. He returned with a bottle of whiskey, clean cloth, and a basin of water. Let me see the arm. Kit sat at the table while Thomas cleaned the wound. His hands were steady, practiced. Up close, she could see that he was breathing hard too, a bruise forming on his jaw where the constable must have landed a blow. You fight well, she said. So do you. He wrapped the clean cloth around her arm, tying it carefully. Where'd you learn? The streets, where everyone learns. Kit watched his face. What about you? That wasn't street fighting. That was training. Thomas's hands stilled briefly, then continued their work. I've had education in various things. You're lying. Yes. He finished tying the bandage and sat back. But I'm not ready to tell you the whole truth yet. Just like you're not ready to tell me why you really want Strand destroyed. They looked at each other across the small table. The candle between them cast shadows that made Thomas's face harder to read, but Kit could see the intelligence in his eyes, the calculation. You knew about the raid, she said. Didn't you? I suspected something might happen. That's not an answer. No, it's not. Thomas poured whiskey into 2 cups, pushed one toward her. Here's what I can tell you. I'm working undercover. My goal is to bring down Strand's entire operation. I have resources, connections, information. What I don't have is someone inside who can get close to Strand himself. And you think that's me? I know it is. You've already proven yourself more capable than most of his crew. Thomas took a drink. But tonight was a warning. Strand's operation is under pressure. The police are watching. His rivals are circling. He's going to get more paranoid, more violent. Working for him is going to get more dangerous. I can handle it. Can you? Thomas leaned forward. Kit, I saw your face when you hesitated at the warehouse. You had a chance to run, and you stayed. Why? Kit's throat tightened. That's not... You stayed because Strand was inside, and you wanted to see him caught. Because this is personal for you. Because you hate him enough that you almost got yourself arrested just to watch him fall. Thomas's voice was intense now. Am I wrong? She wanted to deny it, wanted to tell him to mind his own business, to stop seeing things she didn't want seen. But he'd saved her tonight, had risked exposure, possibly his entire operation, to pull her away from arrest. That counted for something, even if she didn't know why he'd done it. He killed my father, Kit said quietly. 8 years ago. Made it look like an accident. No one cared, no one investigated, no one even remembered his name a week later. She met Thomas's eyes. I want Strand to pay for that. I want him to lose everything, the way I teach everything. And I want to be the one who does it. Thomas was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. I understand. Do you? More than you know. He refilled his cup, stared into it. I've seen what men like Strand do, the lives they destroy, the people they corrupt, the system they twist to protect themselves. The law should stop them, but the law is broken, bought, or blind. So sometimes you have to work outside it. Is that what you're doing? Yes. Thomas looked up. I'm working undercover to build a case against Strand. A real case, one that can't be bribed away or buried. But it takes time, resources, and evidence. Things I can get more easily with someone inside his organization feeding me information. Kit's mind raced. If Thomas was actually working undercover, and the way he'd fought tonight, the safe house, his knowledge of the raid all suggested he was, then he might be law after all. A police inspector possibly working some kind of long operation, which made him dangerous in a different way than she'd thought. You want me to be your informant, she said. I want us to work together. Thomas held her gaze. You get me information. I provide you with protection, resources, backup when you need it. We both want Strand destroyed. We're more likely to succeed if we cooperate. I work alone. You almost got arrested tonight working alone. His voice was sharp now. And if I hadn't been there, you'd be in a cell right now, probably facing the gallows. Is your pride worth that? Kit's hands curled into fists on the table. It's not about pride. It's about trust. I don't know you. I don't know your real name, your real purpose, who you're really working for. You could be setting me up, using me to build your case, planning to arrest me the moment I'm no longer useful. I could be, but I'm not. Thomas leaned back. Here's the truth, as much as I can give you. My name is Thomas Graves. I'm a police inspector working undercover to bring down Strand's smuggling operation. I've been investigating him for 6 months, gathering evidence, building connections. But he's protected by people higher up than me, and I need proof that can't be ignored or buried. The honesty of it was startling. Kit studied his face, looking for deception, but saw only exhaustion and grim determination. Why tell me that? She asked. If I go to Strand, tell him there's a police inspector infiltrating his operation, you won't. How do you know? Because you want him destroyed properly, not arrested and released on a technicality, not bought out of prison by his connections. You want him finished, his empire collapsed, everything he built turned to ash. Thomas's smile was cold. The law alone can't do that. But you and I, working together, we might actually pull it off. Kit wanted to refuse, wanted to walk away, maintain her independence, keep her vendetta personal and private. But Thomas was right about one thing. She'd almost been caught tonight. And alone, with just her skills and rage, she would eventually fail. Strand was too well protected, too careful, too connected. She needed help, even if admitting it felt like swallowing glass. If we do this, she said slowly, I'm not your subordinate. We're partners, equal say in how things go. Agreed. I don't report to anyone but you. If your superiors find out about me, if I become a problem for your career, you don't get to sacrifice me to save yourself. I wouldn't promise it. Kit's voice was hard. Swear you won't throw me to the law when it's convenient. Thomas met her eyes for a long moment. Then he held out his hand across the table. I swear. We're partners. Your secrets are safe with me. Kit looked at his hand, at the man who'd just upended every plan she'd carefully built, who offered partnership when she'd sworn to work alone, who saw through her masks with unnerving clarity. This was a mistake. She knew it was a mistake. But maybe it was the kind of mistake that could actually work. She took his hand. His grip was firm, calloused. The handshake of someone who worked with his hands, despite the educated accent and middle-class lodgings. "So," Kit said, releasing his hand. "Partners, what now? Now you tell me everything you know about Strand's operation, and I tell you what I've learned from the outside." Thomas pulled out a notebook from his coat. "Then we figure out how to destroy him together." Kit pulled out the chair, settled in. Outside, London was hunting for the smugglers who'd escaped the raid. Somewhere, Strand was regrouping, counting his losses, planning his next move. And here, in a safe house that smelled of damp and candle wax, a pickpocket and an inspector began planning the destruction of the man who'd killed Kit's family and corrupted the city they both called home. It wasn't the alliance Kit had wanted, but it might be the one she needed. And for the first time in 8 years, she wasn't facing her vendetta alone. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Kit pulled out everything she knew about Strand's operation, and together, she and Thomas began to build a trap that would bring down an empire. Outside, the fog pressed against the windows, and somewhere in the darkness, Victor Strand had no idea that his two most dangerous enemies had just joined forces.